Chris Ferguson with the STS-126 crew, and you're watching NASA TV.
Well, good afternoon. I'll tell you, it's great to be in Florida on this gorgeous afternoon. We were just commenting, we managed to make it all the way from Houston to Florida without seeing a single cloud, and that is a real rarity. But thank you for coming out and welcoming us. Of course, this is our dress rehearsal week for the crew of STS-126. I think when every commander gets assigned to a flight, and when he gets ready to fly, he believes that he has the best possible crew that the training will allow, and I'm no exception. I'm extremely fortunate to have this great crew supporting me for the next month or so until the mission is complete. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce them to you. All the way to my left is Sandy Magnus. Sandy is a veteran of STS-112. Of course, she is our #1 mission objective is to take her up to the space station and and relieve Greg Chamitoff, who's been up there for about 6 months. I'm sure Greg is eager to get back with his family, and Sandy is eager to get up there and do what you've trained for the last 3 years, and that is assume the station crew member responsibility roles. So one of the disadvantages that we have with having a shuttle rotation crew member is that we don't get to spend enough time with them, and Sandy has been such a wonderful person and cooperative through our flow. We only wish that she was a part of the regular crew, and we have had the opportunity to train with her for the entire year. Next to her is Heidi Piper. Heidi and I flew together on STS-115. Heidi is she's going to be the lead spacewalker on this flight. She'll be leading the 3 of the spacewalks, and she'll be honchoing the 4th one as she watches our 2 space rookies go out there and do it on their own. Heidi is a wonderful crew member. When I found out I was going to get this flight, I made sure that she was a part of the crew. So we're looking forward to working with each other yet again. To my left, Don Pettit. Don Pettit is probably not much of a stranger to any of you. He's a veteran of Expedition 6. He is no stranger to the International Space Station, and he is eagerly looking forward to getting back up there in his home away from home. And we're very happy to have him. Don will be taking care of the multi-purpose logistics module, the MPLM. That is the focus of our mission. We have a very full MPLM, about 18,000 pounds of cargo in a 9,000-pound MPLM. It's one of the heaviest ones we've ever launched, and it's Don's chief responsibility to make sure it all gets unpacked and gets packed properly. To my right is the pilot, Eric Bowe. Eric may be a rookie in the terms of things, but he's far superior, I think, to any rookie that I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with, including myself when I was a rookie pilot. His chief responsibility will be to back me up throughout the mission on all the launch, entry, rendezvous phases. Of course, he also has responsibilities with regard to the shuttle's robotic arm, and he will also perform the fly around after undocking, and he will be the choreographer or the quarterback for a couple of our EVAs. To his right, Steve Bowen. Steve Bowen is again, this is another one of our rookies, however, a rookie only in terms because he's extremely experienced, very competent. He'll be performing 3 EVAs on this flight, and the last of which will be EVA 4, and he will lead that, which is very unusual, and I think it speaks greatly of his capabilities as a spacewalker. And finally, to the right, Shane Kimbrough. Shane Kimbrough is our Army representative to the crew. Shane also has the distinction of being the first member of the 2004 class to fly. So I think, again, that speaks very greatly of his capabilities. He'll be performing 2 EVAs, and he'll also, him and Eric together will do the robotic operations, and he will factor greatly into a lot of the day-to-day operations throughout the entire dock time frame. If I had to summarize our mission in 3 quick objectives, first and foremost, as I mentioned, is to relieve Greg Chamitoff and take Sandy up and make her part of the permanent station crew. The second of which, as I alluded to, is to unload the MPLM. The past several missions to the International Space Station have been construction missions. We've seen large modules go up to increase the internal volume of the space station, but it's move-in day. And we will go up, and on flight day 6, hopefully you'll see 5 or 6 large racks come out and become part of the plus-up, if you will, from a 3 to a 6-person capability, which will hopefully bring to fruition after this mission is over. So again, the prime objective is to take the space station up to 6 crew members, or at least give them the capability to go up to 6 crew members. And then finally, and not least, is to effect a repair on the solar alpha rotary joint. Heidi and her team, their prime responsibility up there will be to take this solar alpha rotary joint, which is unexpectedly incurred some problems with a delamination, if you will, of the lubricating or the running surface on the bearings, and we're going to clean that, lubricate it, and hopefully bring it up to its full capability. So again, the crew of STS-126, we're happy to be here. We launch in under 3 weeks, so it's great to be out here for the dress rehearsal. We hope for weather like this when we come out for the real thing. Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us here at Launchpad 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the commander of the STS-126 mission during Space Shuttle Endeavour's Terminal Countdown Demonstration Test. Commander Ferguson.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful but windy and a little chilly Florida day. I am Commander Chris Ferguson, the commander of the mission for STS-126 ULF-2. What I'd like to do is hand off the mic briefly to each of the crew members, allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Good morning. My name is Eric Bowe. My hometown's Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm the pilot for the mission.
Hi, good morning. I'm Steve Bowen. I'll be MS2 and EV2 for the mission.
Good morning. I'm Sandra Magnus. I'm MS5, but I'm also Flight Engineer 2. I'll be staying on station for probably about 4 months, and Greg Shematoff will be coming back in my place.
Good morning, I'm Shane Kimbrough from Atlanta, Georgia as well. I'll be EV3 on the mission.
I'm Don Pettit from Silverton, Oregon. I'm MS1.
Good morning, I'm Heidi Piper, and I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota, so I guess this is a summer day. And I'll be MS4, or MS3, excuse me, and the EV1 on the mission.
Thank you. I would anticipate there won't be too many questions since it's a relatively clean launch flow. Of course, the orbiter has been out here for a few months. It was designated as the rescue mission, the STS-400 orbiter for the Hubble flight. Of course, since the Hubble flight has been delayed, it's now exclusively devoted to the STS-126 mission. And I'd like to open it up if there are any questions.
Hi, good morning. My name is James Dean. I'm with Florida Today. Just wondered if you could talk a little bit about the significance of this delivery of cargo you're making to the station, especially for those of you who are going to be spending a long time on the station or have already spent time there. What is it going to mean to be able to expand the crew sizes, and how different a place will it be when you leave than in your past experiences there?
Sure. I'll address one half of that, and then I'd like to hand it off to Sandy. Perhaps since she's going to be living with the hardware we'll be delivering, I'll let her answer the second half. The ULF-2 mission has been a hallmark mission for the space station construction, since it will bring the capability for the space station occupants. It will take us up to 6 crew full-time. I'd like to think of it in terms of we're turning the space station from a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, 1-bath outpost to a 5-bedroom, 2-bath orbiting laboratory from which we can conduct science for the years to come. It'll also have a gym, and for the first time we're actually going to have a small refrigerator. So as far as crew amenities are concerned, I'd like to think that this mission is extremely important. Not to mention, of course, it brings the ability to have the multiple nations represented on board, and performing in addition to the station maintenance, we can also do science on a much regular basis. So I'd like to hand it off to Sandy. Perhaps she's got a few words to offer.
Of course, we've been anxious to get to 6-person crew for a very long time, and this mission is the first stepping stone towards that. One of the really neat things that we're going to be setting up, Mike and I, during the course of our stay is the regeneration system for water. As you know, we need to be able to regenerate all the wastewater and make it potable, and then continue to live off of that. And not only is this important to bring the station to 6-person crew capability, but also it's a technology demonstration for technology we'll need to use as we go on to the Moon and Mars. So that you can see the station has a lot of purposes, a lot of uses. I know Don spent 6 months there, and when we were both there before, it was quite a smaller place, and now we're going up with 3 new modules, and it's going to be really exciting to see that. And when we get 6 people up there, I think it's big enough it still won't feel very crowded, but this will be very exciting.
It was only been in the last couple of months that we learned any detail about your plans for the SARG repairs for the spacewalkers, I guess. I'm wondering if how much time you've had to practice and what the most challenging aspects of those spacewalks will be.
I guess that's my question. And actually, the last couple of months, it's about as long as we've known about or had the complete details of the repair. We've known about it since the end of last summer when they first started noticing that there was some erratic currents, some current draw on the apparatus that controls the SARG. And since then, they've done a number of spacewalks and trying to assess the damage as best as they can here on the ground and with the limited amount of information that can flow from orbit. But in the past year, we've been working with the engineers and coming up with a plan. Had the crews on previous missions go out and test some of the concepts. For example, the lubing, the cleaning, and probably in the last 3-4 months, we've come together with the plan. On the starboard SARG, we're going to go out and change out all the trundle bearing assemblies. One was changed out on the last mission. They removed it last fall, brought it back home, got a look at it, and they decided that one of the things they want to do is change out all the bearings, and then the bearing surface, the race ring, is we're going to go out and clean it and lubricate it, put some brake coat on it, and hopefully with the increased lubrication and the new trundle bearings, we can get the SARG back to the point that it can function as it was designed to, and they'll be able to fully utilize the arrays on the starboard side. So that repair is going to be spread out over 3 EVAs, and then on the 4th EVA, Steve and Shane are going to go out and do a lubrication on the port side, and a lot of that is a preventive measure that we don't want to end up in the same case on the port side that we have on the starboard side. So they'll go out and do that, and hopefully we'll get everything back up running. If not fully functional, then 95% functional.
Hi guys, Bill Harwood, CBS, and thanks for coming out in the chilly weather for us. And Heidi, let me follow that up if I could. When we saw these videos on past EVAs of the metal filings and shavings that are all clustered around the race, can you just walk through a little bit about how you get that stuff off and don't end up spreading it around? I mean, just how that process works. And when you say 95% back to capable, are you guys hoping to auto track on the starboard side, or is it still going to be a case of just positioning it as warranted as time goes on? I've been unclear on that. Thanks.
Yeah, the debris is a big issue because in the past when they've gone up there, it is a lot of very fine particles, and they get liberated fairly easily just by touching it. And so what we're going up with is we're going to have pre-lubricated wipes, so wipes that have been impregnated with the brake coat grease, that you can pat the debris, and we're hoping that that's going to contain it. Also, some of the modeled surfaces, they found that scraping works well, and so also applying grease to try to adhere as much of the particles as we can, and then scrape it up. And so that's our cleaning technique. And then once we get it as much of the particles off, we'll be applying another layer of grease to all 3 of the bearing surfaces that are on the race ring. And the intent there is that the grease will get spread out with the bearings rolling over it, and it'll leave a fine layer that'll provide the lubrication, and then any debris that's there just gets contained in the grease and gets pushed out of the bearing surface, and so it's not going to be impeding the movement of the bearings.
And in terms of auto track on starboard, what the plan is long range?
I'm not real sure about that.
Yeah, of course, the ultimate intent is to go back to auto track. After they lubricate the bearings, they're going to try some directed position maneuvers and assess the vibrations, and we'll see from there whether they can go to auto track. But that's the ultimate goal.
Thanks. And one for you, Commander. When they rotated your tank back in the VAV, there was a clank in the tank, and which, if you follow things like that, always makes you wonder what made the clank. What are your thoughts about that? I know they've obviously cleared it, but what are your thoughts about it? Somebody riding the thing? Thanks.
Well, I know that Lockheed and USA put together a great team of folks who tried to run that completely to ground zero. Of course, there was no smoking gun, so to speak. What they did is they went and looked at all the crucial areas. They X-rayed all the crucial areas, found nothing, and came to the conclusion that if there is anything, that it could be taken up by the inlet screens. You know, we trust their assessment, their judgment, and we're confident the tank is completely clean.
Can you just talk a little bit about the training you're doing here these few days at KSC? Obviously, in terms of the emergency escapes and so forth, stuff that you hope never to need to do. But how important is it for you to get this time in before your launch and then do the dress rehearsal?
Have had the opportunity to see this before. So what I'd like to do is maybe hand that off to someone who hasn't. And how about we start with Eric?
Well, the training really is very important. You know, for a lot of us, this is for three of us actually. It's the first chance to actually get in the vehicle while it's on the pad, kind of see how things are. Obviously, there's differences between the actual equipment and the equipment that we're using here, so it's a real good chance for us to take a look at it and really see how, you know, kind of the final details of the things in our training process. And let me hand it off to someone else.
I really don't have much more to say than what Eric said, and I'm looking for the opportunity to see how the vehicle actually feels, to lay on my back and get my feet up, and what can you really reach, what can you really see, and those sort of details you don't get in the training even back at JSC. And I'll pass it on to Shane since he's the last of us.
All right, some of the egress training you're talking about, yesterday we got to drive the M113, which was a lot of fun, and again, something we hope to never have to actually do for real, but we got that training, and I think we're all ready to go if we have to do that. Tomorrow we'll go through a Mode 1 egress, so we'll be on the pad strapped in and then have to get out and get in the slide wire baskets, not ride down the rail, but go up pretty much through the motions up to that point. So again, like Eric and Steve were saying, for us first timers, it's just a great opportunity to get in the real vehicle on the launch pad and just get more comfortable with our equipment.
Yeah, one quick one for me, for Don Pettit, if I could. Don, going to 6 people is a big deal in the station's life. Obviously, you're someone who spent some time there. What does that mean? What does it mean to get 6 people up there from not from a research standpoint so much, but a habitability standpoint with all the equipment you guys are bringing up, et cetera? How's life going to be on the station after that gets rolling? Thanks.
Well, one thing you have is twice the crew size, which is what Station was designed for, and you have more hands and bodies in which to get work done. The other thing it does is it looks at your resupply issues. How do you support 6 people living and working in space? It's a lot easier to support 3. You can use things once and kind of throw them away when you got 3 people. When you start to get 6 people, you have to start thinking about reusing your items more than once. We're going to be reusing our water more than once with the equipment that we're bringing up on this mission. I like to call it the coffee machine. It'll take yesterday's coffee and turn it into today's coffee, and that's an essential thing that we need to do if we're going to think about going away from Earth for long periods of time, like setting up a lunar base or wandering off to Mars. And we're just now trying to shake that kind of technology out by going to a 6-person crew and having this kind of equipment and operating it day in and day out just to see how robust that machinery happens to be.
Just one quick follow-up, Don. Do you have any long-term concerns for resupply with 6 people? I mean, Shuttle's ending in 2010, uncertainty about commercial vehicles. What are your thoughts about that? Thanks.
Actually, that kind of transcends. You'd have to talk to a logistics person that looks at the flow of vehicles going up and down, and we've got a number of different kinds of vehicles that can serve a station. Currently, we have the Shuttle, we have Soyuz, we have Progress, we have ATV, and we're going to have HTV. So I like to think that with all these vehicles going up and down, we'll be able to keep the supplies flowing at the needed rate. You'll really have to talk to the guys that look at stowing those things and the schedule to see how that turns out.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for questions. We'll ask the crew to stand by for a photo opportunity before getting them back to training. And if I could ask you to please remove your glasses. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is change the lineup.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's crew news conference with the STS-126 crew. We'll start with some introductions of the crew and some statements from the commander, and then take questions from here at the Johnson Space Center as well as other NASA centers. With that, we'll turn it over to Commander Chris Ferguson.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you and welcome. We're glad you could all join us today for the press briefing for the STS-126 ULF-2 mission. I think you'll find as we go through what we plan to do on the mission that we have a very exciting and very tightly packed timeline over 15 days on orbit. What I'd like to do is introduce the crew to you, and then we'll go ahead and open up the floor for questions. So first to my left is the pilot, Eric Bowe. Eric Bowe is an Air Force colonel, and he's got experience with the F-4 Phantom, one of the last, I believe, operational F-4 guys in the Air Force, and then he went on to fly F-15Cs. He's a graduate of the Air Force Academy, and you know, typically the pilot has responsibilities that were formerly relegated to making sure that all the orbiter systems work well. Lately, however, with these tightly packed space station missions, the pilot is very highly utilized, and Eric is no exception. He'll be doing some work with the EVAs. He'll be an IV, a task IV, a quarterback, if you will, for two of the IVs or for two of the EVAs. He'll also be performing robotic operations during the inspections, and he'll also be involved with the transfer activity. It's great to have him as part of a crew. He's a rookie only in the sense of the word. He has the distinction of being the first pilot in his class to fly. It's great to have him as part of the crew, and we're looking forward to the first smile we get out of him as soon as we get on orbit. So over to you, Eric.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's we're all very excited to put Endeavour through her paces as we head on, going from basically bringing up the supplies to go from a crew of 3 to a crew of 6. And I'd like to now introduce MS-1, Don Pettit. Don Pettit's no stranger to spaceflight. He went up also on Endeavour on STS-113 and then came home on a Soyuz and flew with Expedition 6. And I know Don is really excited to get back on board and see the changes that we've made from when he was there till now. Don?
Thanks, Eric. I consider space station my home away from home, and it's going to be great to go back there for a visit. It is going to be a visit for this mission, 15 days. That's a pretty good chunk of time, and I'm looking forward to pushing back all the technology that we're going to be doing on our timeline. To my left is Steve Bowen. He's a captain in the Navy, and he has the distinction of being one of these Navy folks that go in submarines. And so he's used to being in a can, and now he's going to be going into a can and set underwater. The can's going to be in orbit, so it should feel like home to him, although I understand the view will be a little bit better.
The food may not be as good, but I appreciate that, Don. And I actually have the opportunity, the pleasure to introduce Heidi Piper, who's our lead EV person on the crew. She's been a leader in the EVA community for a number of years now, and I've had a great opportunity to learn from her. She's a captain in the United States Navy, a graduate from MIT, from St. Paul, Minnesota, and
she will be leading all of our EVAs.
Thank you, Steve. I definitely look forward to having the opportunity to go back into space, and what I think is more important is being able to go back out into space, to go out and do EVAs on my second flight. It's a tremendous opportunity to be able to look back on the Earth and look back at the shuttle and get another perspective of the space station, and to see it from the outside, and to realize what a tremendous feat it is that we've put this this construction in orbit, and now we're starting to transition a little bit from tapering down, from building it to maintaining it in space and keeping it up and running. And to help me out in that feat is a number of folks. It's not just one person. Steve's going out with me on 2 of the EVAs, and then on the last EVA he goes out with Shane. Shane goes out on the second EVA. And so I'd like to introduce Shane Kimbrough, MS4 on the flight. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He flew Apache helicopters, a graduate of the West Point, the military academy, and the captain of his baseball team. And although he's not going to be throwing any pitches, he's going to be doing quite a lot of tasks on this mission. I already mentioned going out EVA. He's doing IV, doing robotics works, a lot of internal tasks, quite a lot for someone on their first flight, but Shane is definitely up to it.
Thanks, Heidi, and good afternoon. It's great to be here and great to be part of this mission. I'm really looking forward to my first space flight. I have the pleasure of introducing to my left here Dr. Sandy Magnus. She's from Belleville, Illinois, and again, no stranger to space flight. She flew on STS-112 back in 2002, and in the last few years she's been training for her Expedition 18 mission. So shortly after we get to the space station, unfortunately we're going to have to let Sandy go be a part of the space station crew, where she'll be a flight engineer and will remain up there for about 4 months.
Thank you, Shane. And I guess I'd like to represent the Expedition 18 crew as well, Yuri and Mike, who will be joining on orbit, as well as Greg, whose place I will be taking, and will be a very busy, expanded crew up there, getting everything done that we need to get done while the shuttle's up there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll start now with questions here from the Johnson Space Center. We'll start on this side. If you can include your name and affiliation.
Yeah, hi guys, it's Bill Harwood with CBS News. And Heidi, let me ask you the question we asked our EVA briefer just a few moments ago, and that is, all of us have experience with caulk guns and grease guns, and the stuff gets all over everything. And we were just told that you guys have this down to a science, and it's not going to get all over everything, but tell me why it's not, and how that works for you guys. I mean, obviously it's the consistency of the brake coated and temperatures and everything else, but how is that going to go?
Well, that is one of our challenges that we have, because when we go outside, we want to make sure that we get the grease where it's supposed to go, and that's on the race rings to help lubricate the Sarge race ring. And you know, we're well aware of the fact that not to get grease all over ourselves, and really part of it is, as you mentioned, is the consistency of it. We've had a little bit of opportunity to practice with it here on the ground, to actually use the gun, squirt it on the race ring itself, using the different applicators that we have, and a lot of it is just going to be diligent on our part. Is when you go out there do this work, even though it's not a fine, delicate task, it is a fine, delicate task in the sense that you don't want to get grease all over yourself and everywhere else. And so you just got to work slowly and very deliberately in what you're doing.
Thanks. A quick one, complete change of subject for Sandy Magnus. You did this at the ISS-18 briefings back in, I guess it was July, when you talked to us the last time. But could you walk us through the schedule of activation of the WRS racks? Your test schedule, when you expect to have, whatever, during your stage that you can actually drink, and how that all works out.
Yeah, as you know, we've got the 2 water regeneration racks, and we're taking up the new toilet, and all of these racks will be connected together into a water system that will allow us to start. We're going to start with, there's 5 containers of wastewater from the Russian toilet that we're going to be attaching into the potable bus system to start the regeneration system going. We'll be taking samples of that system periodically. We're going to attach the Total Organic Carbon Analyzer, the TOCA, made this flight, and that's a way to do analysis on orbit of the quality of the water. We also connect up the portable water dispenser, which is sort of part of the galley, if you will, that we're going to have up on station. And so once all these systems are connected, we'll be regularly doing water samples. We're going to try really hard to get a water sample down on this mission from the TOCA and from the water regeneration system itself, so they can be compared on the ground. A lot of the other samples that we take in periodically over the next 4 months will come down on 119, and then once the ground has been able to do the analysis and make sure that the water is the quality they expect, then we'll be given the go to actually drink it. But during our mission, we'll mainly be doing the sampling. We'll be running a lot of those samples through the analyzer on board at the same time we're taking the samples from the generation system, so we can analyze how well the TOCA is performing. So there'll be a lot of water work on this mission.
Okay, moving up here to the front.
Oh, thank you, Mark Carreau from the Houston Chronicle. My question is related, but it has to do with actually doing the plumbing to put all this equipment in, and I'm wondering if it's Dr. Pettit or Sandy Magnus that could sort of explain what's involved in hooking up these racks with the water regeneration equipment. Thanks.
Go ahead, Don.
Well, first we have to get the racks out from the MPLM, and there's 2 water processing racks, and they're connected together with some hoses, and we have to disconnect those hoses in the MPLM, move them into the lab, and then there's several stages of getting these racks prepped for use. There's a number of key components in these racks that were left out for launch due to launch loads, and we have to put all these little boxes inside. The distillation unit is one box, the organic, the catalytic converter is another box, and so we'll have to outfit the racks with these boxes, which are also brought up on the MPLM. There are a number of hoses and cables and things that were left disconnected and fastened down with launch restraints, and those have to be released, and all of those things hooked up. And then all the plumbing that goes between the water processing racks and the galley and the toilet, all of those connections need to be made. And then there's also going to be connections going to the oxygen generation rack, which is already on board. So this is sort of a whole suite of racks that give an amazing capability for reclaiming our spent water.
Next.
Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com for Don. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 Saturdays that you're going to be in orbit. Are you going to have any time to do Saturday morning science, as people have seen, and maybe extend that to Sandy about what you might be doing on board as well?
Unfortunately, shuttle missions are really, really packed. They seem to extract as many pounds of flesh out of us as they can, and I just can't see how there's going to be time to do this, unfortunately. If I have a few moments on this mission, I'll probably use it to catch up on sleep.
And Sandy? Yeah, once the shuttle undocks, Mike and I plan to have a little powwow and figure out how to most effectively use some of our times on Saturdays and just sort of get organized. So hopefully we can come across doing something. I'm hoping in some of my spare time to be able to do some kind of fun educational videos for students. I think there's a lot of the magic of space that you can show kids and get them interested and excited about the environment and about science and math and engineering. So that's going to be one of my pet projects, really.
Next.
Jill Tolk, representing the Cohasset Mariner in Massachusetts. Question for Steve. What sort of things would you like to figuratively bring along with you to share with your hometown people?
Let's see. Well, I have a couple items stowed on board for that I'll get back up to Cohasset when I get an opportunity to visit, hopefully next next spring. I don't know, right now I'd probably like the weather. I'd like it a little bit cooler than it is here, and I miss the changing of the seasons. That's about it, I guess.
Okay. If we have any last questions here at the Johnson Space Center, we have one more.
I'm Mary Ann Dyson with the National Space Society. I'm working with some 5th grade students at Maid Creek Elementary, and they're writing the biographies of 4 of you that have flown before. And I especially like to get the commander to tell us something that's not on your NASA standard bio that the students would like to know about you, why you're an astronaut, or things that you do?
Not in my standard bio. Wow. Well, I think the fact that I'm a musician is probably indicated in my bio, but that is one real pleasure I enjoy. I play with a local band here, and I would encourage anybody. I have 3 teenage children, and they've all been involved with music, and I think, and I learned at a young age too, if you could encourage a youngster to get into any one single activity that I think will accompany him for the rest of his life, it would be music.
And any of the others, do you have something that you'd like to tell the students about yourself? Like, what caused you to want to become an astronaut, or what do you think you learned as a student that was really helpful for you as an astronaut?
I think one of the most important things that you learn as a student is just that, how to learn. Because we as astronauts are constantly having to learn new things, and it's actually very exciting to have that challenge every day of having new things thrown at us that we have to master. And it's just like being a student. You get that every day in school. And I would just maybe like to let the students know that they're really at a great time of their lives because they're getting all these new things to learn, and that they should really enjoy it, and it's just a lot of fun.
I'd like to kind of touch along those same bases is that I guess if I were to throw out a word of wisdom to the students, and that's to keep trying. And an example I use is when I was at MIT, I had an ROTC scholarship, and for my freshman year I was determined to go fly for the Navy. And it turned out right before I was commissioned and had a pre-commissioning physical, they told me that I failed the eye test, and so I couldn't become a pilot. And you know, although I was disappointed at the moment, and I found something else that I grew to love, and that was diving. And I really enjoyed it, and I was perfectly happy. I would have been perfectly happy to finish my entire naval career doing diving and salvage. And lo and behold, I went from diving to the space program because I decided that spacewalks were more like diving than flying. And so I figured now I get to fly in the ultimate machine, the space shuttle. So the lesson there is if things don't work out one way, they may work out another way, even better.
I'm from Silverton, Oregon. It's a small log and farming town, and just the background growing up in this community I think gave me an advantage because we could sit there and fix farm machinery, and I worked as a heavy equipment mechanic for a construction logging outfit, helped pay my way through college, and the skills you can pick up when you come from a rural environment like this come in handy when you're on the space station, because to first order, what I'm going to be doing this flight isn't any different than what I did during my college summertime when I was working for this little construction outfit.
No other questions here at the Johnson Space Center. We'll switch now to Kennedy Space Center, where there are some media present.
Yes, Marcia Dunn, Associated Press, with a few questions for Dr. Magnus. I'm wondering if you could say in so many words why you think it's important for NASA as soon as possible to double the crew size at the space station, and not just from a scientific point of view, but perhaps for a public relations point of view. How important is that to get it going?
Well, I think it's important for a lot of reasons. Of course, I won't mention the science specifically, but from an operational viewpoint, as we move on to get ready to go to the Moon and Mars, we're going to have larger crew sizes, and we're going to have many different types of people we interact with on the ground. And I think one of the things that we're going to have to learn when we go to a six-person crew is how do you have 6 people on board, how do they interact, and how do you interact with all the ground control centers and carry on all of the operations that you need to carry on when you've got so many activities going on. And I think you'll see a little bit different kind of lifestyle, a little different kind of dynamic up there. And as far as the public relation part goes, I think the more people we can get into space, the better off we are, and the more excited people on the ground will be as we see human beings moving off the planet and establishing lives and lifestyles. And this is just a stepping stone into the larger bases that we expect to have someday on the Moon and Mars.
Thank you. And you're going to be missing quite a few holidays at the end of the year while you're up there in space. And I'm wondering, are you taking your own Christmas presents that you can open on December 25th? Or how are you going to be handling all of this holiday when it comes time on the space station?
Well, I've heard rumors that the Progress vehicle that's coming in December, in early December, will have some Christmas presents on it for us, so I'm eagerly looking forward to that. As well, I'll be able to video conference with my family on Christmas, and I'm really looking forward to entertaining my nieces and nephews and kind of doing fun space tricks for them. So I think we'll have a pretty special Christmas.
Okay, that was our last question from Kennedy Space Center. We'll now switch to headquarters.
Hi, Tracy Watson with USA Today for the commander and the crew member who has lived on the ISS before, Dr. Pettit. If you could talk about the 10th anniversary of the ISS and what that means and what you might do, if anything, to observe that. Thank you.
We do have a short video piece that Mike Finke and Yuri and I will be doing likely on Flight Day 5. We'll send down to commemorate the occasion. It's clearly a significant milestone in the life of the International Space Station. We hope that there are several more 10 and 20 anniversaries that are in the not too distant future. But hopefully you'll see something specifically that'll commemorate it on a live downlink.
I'd like to point out that when we as a society undertake a major engineering task, one that pushes the state of our current engineering, it seems like it always takes a canonical 10 years to get it done. And history shows how long did it take us to build Panama Canal, Brooklyn Bridge, choose your favorite piece of engineering technology that it was advancing that particular day. And you'll find all of these projects took longer to build than they first thought they were going to. They were all over budget, and there is some kind of scandal or controversy that would happen during the course of their construction. And here we are in the middle of building Space Station, and we're 10 years down the road, and it still isn't built. It's almost built, and it's an amazing, wonderful piece of technology that once it's done, people probably won't even think too much about how long it took to build it, and they'll just be concentrating on the aspect that, hey, we have it, it's there, and it's working. It's working for its intended purposes.
Thank you. This is Tariq Malik from Space.com and Space News, and my question is for Commander Ferguson. I was curious with a 15-day mission that seems packed full of everything you can pack into a space shuttle mission. I'm just curious how you see kind of pacing your crew to make sure that you kind of stick with the schedule and make sure that everyone is rested, for the flight. Thanks.
That's a great question, Tarek. As a matter of fact, I think Bill Gerstenmaier at the end of the flight readiness review kind of queried how we managed to put so much stuff into such a short mission. So it is indeed a fully packed timeline. We have 98 hours, which I think is a record for transfer time allocated to fully emptying the entirely full MPLM. We're going to be bringing out a total of about 15,000 pounds of stuff, and when it's emptied, we'll be returning about 3,500 pounds of equipment to be returned back to Earth. And all the while, we'll be performing the critical on-orbit activities that Sandy and Don had talked about earlier, and that is activating the water regeneration system. Not to mention the fact that we'll be also conducting 4 spacewalks during our dock time frame. So it is an extremely packed mission, but this is an extremely competent crew. We trained together for about 13 months now. I think everybody is very well versed in what activities they need to do and when they need to do them to get the job done. I would almost be surprised if we didn't end up with an extra dock day, depending upon how our cryogenic margins go. But that extra dock day probably would go to performing more of the regenerate vehicleless activation in the water regenerative system, because that's a very high priority, as you well know, for the 6-person crew. So just to answer your question in summary, it's a lot of mission, but we're the right people to do it. And if anybody has anything else to offer, I'd like to open up the floor. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks. And I just had a quick follow-up, maybe for the first-time space flyers. I'm just curious, what you're looking forward to most, or if there's one thing that maybe you heard about but you want to try yourselves. Any insight into that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure, I'll take that one. For us, the first-time flyers, I think one of the biggest things we're looking forward to is the view. I mean, the view is pretty awesome to go see. And the other thing is we've been kind of practicing this, little pieces of the mission the whole time. But I think one of the really cool parts of the mission is actually putting it all together. All the people that take up making a space flight happen is truly amazing. I mean, we get all the different NASA centers, and there's thousands and thousands of people that make this happen. So it's a real honor for us to get the chance to do this, and really looking forward to working to all the people that make this happen.
Okay, that was our last question from Kennedy Space Center. I'm sorry, was there something else? And now we'll switch back to Kennedy for a quick follow-up.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press, with one final question. I'm wondering if you're going to be taking enough turkey dinners around for everybody, not just you 7, but the 3 up there. Pumpkin pie, tell me about spending Thanksgiving in space and how you're going to be doing it at the mealtime or other times.
Well, we are rumored to have stowed away at least 7 turkey dinners. I think we'll have the opportunity to share one with Greg Chamitoff. As you know, we're scheduled currently to undock on Thanksgiving Day, and I believe there's also been even a loose turkey out there that's been sighted that may show up in space. So we're amply prepared. The food organization here really jumped to when they found out we were going to be on orbit for Thanksgiving, and they've given us the full 7-course Thanksgiving meal, and all we need to have now is the time to eat it. So we're well prepared. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're turning here to Johnson Space Center for some additional follow-ups. We'll start with Jill.
Jill Toll, Cohasset Mariner. NASA is famous for its workarounds, as you all know, both in space and on the ground. Without getting too personal, how have you all been able to get through Hurricane Ike in good shape?
I think everybody has a little story about Hurricane Ike. I think, Steve, yours is pretty good. Why don't you go ahead?
We own 3 dogs, and the first thing that blew down was about 160 feet of fencing. And in order to corral the dogs, it became a crisis to get the fence up. We didn't have power for 9 days. And fortunately, I have a soon-to-be teenage son and a soon-to-be 17-year-old son, and I put them to work. And they came through, and we got about 160 feet of fencing back up in just a few days. The dogs were corralled, the neighbors were happier, and finally got our power back. I think it was all related somehow.
Okay.
Hey, Sandy, I think you may have something to share about the hurricane story.
Yeah, I was actually quite frightened about the hurricane because I had a whole back wall of windows in my house, and I couldn't imagine trying to deal with replacing a whole back wall of windows in between, the hurricane and the launch. And I was lucky that the windows stayed intact. However, I have to replace my roof. And it's hard to come by roofers these days, but I am leaving, so I'm having to leave that in the hands of my friends here on the ground to help me kind of pull my house back together, because there's just not enough time to do it. But, there were a lot of people who unfortunately lost a lot during the hurricane, so in general, we all did rather well, and we're very thankful for it.
Another follow-up here.
Mark Carreau from the Houston Chronicle, and this is a question for Don Pettit. I think I'm drawing on some of your Mr. Wizard experience here on Saturday Morning Science, but could you sort of explain how you can take water that's impure and run it through this chemical process that you're going to help install and get some water that is safe for astronauts to drink and to convert into oxygen without breaking down a machine? What's sort of the chemical physical process that's going on instead of these mystery boxes?
The key to the urine processing it uses the age-old practice of distillation. And this is a vacuum distillation apparatus which will put a partial vacuum on urine concentrate, and it will allow the water to boil off at a lower temperature than if you just cooked it under the standard atmosphere of space station. And so the water that comes off from this distillation outfit is going to be pretty pure, but any distillation process has a little bit of carryover. It's kind of like the backwash when you drink in your water bottle. And so to get rid of this little bit of backwash, we run it through a catalytic converter, which will oxidize any of the backwash. And the catalytic converter actually has a supply of oxygen running into it to provide an oxidation material to go with the catalyst to convert the backwash, so to speak. And then from there it goes into a series of ion exchange beds. So at that point it's almost like deionized water. It also goes through a charcoal bed that gets rid of a few other impurities, and then it finally gets analyzed by a couple of online boxes. One of them just checks the bulk resistivity, and if that doesn't satisfy the box, it opens up a valve and sends that splash of water back to go again. It's kind of like a Monopoly game where you don't get to go buy go and get $200. You can just go straight back to the distillation unit. And then from there it goes through this TOCA machine, this total organic carbon analyzer, and organic carbon is the kind of stuff that you don't want. If the feedstock is urine and you're having potable water come out, you don't want organic carbon in there. And so the total organic carbon analyzer lets you know whether any of that stuff has come through. And then from there it can branch out into the oxygen generator or goes into the galley. And in the galley they add some salts just to make the water taste a little bit better, because if you drink distilled water it doesn't taste as good as regular water. And there's a few mineral salts in there that for some reason or another make things more palatable to human beings. And then from there we can use it to make our dinner or our coffee with. And I like to refer to this whole process as a coffee machine, because it's going to take yesterday's coffee and make it into today's coffee. And
okay, next question.
Mary Ann Dyson with National Space Society. This is for the commander. Could you explain to the students what it means to be commander, and especially if something goes wrong, what's your power and authority, so to speak?
Well, we're going to start out with the basic premise that nothing will go wrong. The mission will go entirely perfect, and we'll all return in about 15 days with smiles on our faces. But I think we're well aware that spaceflight is fraught with trials and tribulations. I mean, I'd like to consider it an enormous responsibility, one that has probably kept me up a few nights in the last few months, worrying about this and that, and have I thought of everything? Are we prepared as we need to be? But again, I'd like to refer back to the quality of this fantastic crew. I mean, it's just nice to, early on, I'd like to think I got involved an awful lot. But anymore, I just find myself at some of our gatherings and training sessions where I stand back and everybody just does what they're supposed to do, and I'm allowed to kind of sit back and supervise, if you will. But chances are I'm probably learning more from them than they are from me at that point. So we're starting out with the best of hopes for this mission. I'm confident that we're going to do in the 15 days what we need to do. We're going to get ahead on transfer. We're going to have the MPLM installed. We're going to empty it out. We're even going to do a few things, I hope, that they didn't count on us being able to do or having the time to do. And we're going to undock on time and have a fantastic mission.
Okay, next question here from Johnson Space Center.
James Dean from Florida Today. For Don and Sandy, I guess. Don, are there any tips that you've been able to offer Sandy, having been through an expedition on how to help yourself get through a very long duration stay up in space?
Well, we've been doing a lot of training together, and just in the course of the training, we're sitting there talking, and I
constantly learn things from Sandy because she's had the experience doing the shuttle type flights, and it's a compressed timeline, and you can't dawdle, and so just working with Sandy and seeing her degree of organization has really helped me prepare for this flight.
Yeah, and alternatively, I've learned a lot from working with Don. He has a wealth of experience on station. He's brilliant. There's just always something that I can learn from Don, that we all can learn from Don, and it's been really great working with him. And I have taken a few tips of his, and you know, how to work with the arm without the shuttle lights there, for example, and make sure you can see the whole thing. Just ways, you know, to get your mind set for the living there and things like that. Very, very helpful.
Okay, next question.
Bill Harwood again, CBS. Just a trivial question. Some of us are old enough to remember that back in the early 80s, they actually flew a Pepsi and a Coke can on a space shuttle as kind of a stunt. But you guys are going to put a refrigerator there in the galley. Is there any chance that that'll ever have anything in it that people on the ground would consider remotely good or fun? Or are you going to have, you know, space ice cream up there or something? I don't know. Are you going to have anything in there food-wise that'd be fun?
If there's food in there, it'll be a surprise for us. I know Mike is really looking forward to having the refrigerator up there because, as you may or may not know, on the Russian galley, you cannot get cold water. You can get hot water, or you can get kind of general warm to slightly hot water. So whenever the shuttle's there, the space station crew is really excited because we can get cold drinks. And so now with the refrigerator up there, and it seems kind of trivial, but 6 months of lukewarm orange juice can kind of bum you out. So Mike's looking forward to just putting drinks in there and letting them cool down. But maybe people will surprise us with something. It's hard to say.
Okay, do we have any other questions here from Johnson Space Center? Okay, with that, that wraps up our briefing.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful day, beautiful afternoon in Florida. Before I introduce the crew to you, I would just like to take a moment to recognize the fact that it is Veterans Day. Thank you again all for coming out on the federal holiday. We would just like to pay a tribute to all the men and women who have served and who will serve and who are retired. We have 5 active duty members on this fine space shuttle crew, and we know what it means to serve. So on behalf of the whole crew, I would like to pay a special thanks and debt of gratitude to those currently serving overseas. Okay, the crew of STS-126. To my left, Sandy Magnus. Sandy Magnus is our rotation crew member. She has the fortune of spending 4 months up on station. She'll be brought back by the crew of STS-119 sometime in likely February. To Sandy's right, Steve Bowen. Steve Bowen is our MS-2. He's the first Navy submariner, and he is a captain in the U.S. Navy. And he'll be performing 3 of the spacewalks, and he'll be leading the last one. Immediately to my left, Shane Kimbrough. Shane Kimbrough is a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. Shane will be performing 2 of the spacewalks, and he's a graduate of the Military Academy. To my right, the pilot Eric Bowe. Eric Bowe is a graduate of the Air Force Academy, and this will be his first flight. And I know, like I was on my first flight, he's eagerly anticipating that e-ticket ride into space. To his right, Don Pettit. Don is no stranger to spaceflight. He's a veteran of Expedition 6. He spent 6 months on the International Space Station, followed by a rocky ride in a Soyuz spacecraft back to the Kazakh plains in Russia. And finally, Heidi Piper. Heidi Piper is the lead spacewalker. Heidi and I flew together on STS-115. She will be choreographing the 4 spacewalks and participating in 3 of them. This mission is all about home improvement. Home improvement both inside and outside of the International Space Station. On the inside of the space station, the walls are largely up. We've had some large modules delivered in the last year. Well, it's moving day. It's time to fill them up. And on the outside we have some never before attempted repair work. That repair work will be to hopefully improve the performance of a faulty rotation solar alpha joint rotation mechanism with grease. We've never tried anything like this. So on our first EVA out there on flight day number 5, Heidi and Steve will hit the bricks with grease guns, scrapers, and new trundle bearings in an attempt to bring new life back to the solar alpha joint. Okay, with that, what I'd like to do is bring Heidi up, and she can share a few words about the spacewalks.
Thank you, Chris. Just like to echo what he said, we're all very, very happy to be here. This is like the end of a long journey, and prior to touching down, we all took a little side trip and swung around the orbiter. It looks good on the pad, and we're very excited on getting up to orbit. As Chris had mentioned, we got a packed mission. Going to take a lot of equipment inside a station, fill out the empty walls, so to speak, and outside, hopefully, we'll make station back to the way it's supposed to be. You know, as we all know that there comes a time to start doing maintenance, and this is it, and we're ready to go. So we're very excited and very happy to go. So thank you very much for coming out here.
Thanks so much. Oh, absolutely.
Here in Shuttle Launch Control, we're going to sit down and take a minute with Ken Tenbush, the flow director for Space Shuttle Endeavour, and talk a little bit about the flow and getting ready for the mission. Ken, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's very good to be here.
How have things been going?
So far with the count tonight has been absolutely fantastic. Very smooth, really no issues to talk about. It's just proceeding as expected.
Excellent. Now I understand that you have a video that you'd like to show that's going to go through the count, or go through the, the flow, that's going to explain a little bit about the process, and we can talk about that.
Okay, very good. Sounds good. And here you go. You got Pegasus, the barge, coming in, and it's actually shipped from Louisiana all the way around the tip of Florida, where it comes up the waterway into the turn basin, which is about a quarter mile from the VAB, and you can see the tug right now pulling the external tank off of that tug. They roll it into the vehicle assembly building, and the ET itself is very amazing. That's the liquid hydrogen tank that you're looking at right there, and that's the LOX tank. The tank itself is 154 foot long with a 27 foot diameter, and it weighs empty only 57,000 pounds, but when it's loaded up, it's 1.6 million pounds. And you can see some folks right here. They're doing some digital X-rays on some different areas on the liquid hydrogen feed line, the LOX feed line, and also on the pressurization lines, and verified that we were all clean of any debris there. Here we are in the orbiter processing facility, and you got some techs that are taking some photographs of some tile, some damaged tile. They were getting some 3D imagery to be able to construct a tile for replacement. And here we are in the payload bay. As you can see, the finishing touches being completed in the payload bay as it gets ready for getting ready for a payload installation. And here we go with the installation of the boom. That boom winds up getting installed on the right-hand side of the vehicle, and when they actually go up on orbit, the arm on the orbiter then mates up to that boom, and then they're able to get a good scan on the underside of the vehicle during the mission apps. And here we have the engine being installed, engine number 1 being installed in the aft of the orbiter. And we actually refurbish the main engines every single flow and reinstall them. Here we've got breed tile being installed on the external tank door. we install these hardened tiles around the ET doors and also around the main landing gear doors and the nose landing gear doors. Very rigid, hard tiles in those critical areas, making sure that those areas are protected. And after a good 4 or 5 months, we wind up rolling out of the orbiter processing facility and take that short trip over to the vehicle assembly building. The vehicle assembly building is 525 foot tall, but here we go. It's they're going about 2 miles an hour in this short journey over there, and the transporter itself has got 76 wheels, so it's a very interesting piece of ground support equipment that we have here at KSC. You can see we're behind you, Endeavour. I love that sign as the orbiter's rolling into the VAB, getting positioned for 2 different hooks that wind up going in, picking up that orbiter off the transporter, and then you got this 325-ton crane lifting the orbiter up and over a transom into the integration cell. We've got the external tank and the 2 solid rocket boosters waiting there. The orbiter itself is 122 foot long, 78 foot wide. It's a lot bigger than it looks, but yeah, it's very huge. Here they've got everything mated, put together, and now they're ready to roll the crawler transporter out of the vehicle assembly building. The crawler transporter itself is 6 million pounds, and it gets 150 gallons to the mile, so maybe not the best gas mileage. And it's a long journey out to the pad. It takes about 7.5 hours to make that journey out there. And here we can see the mobile launcher platform being set on the stanchions out at Pad B. Again, it's a very careful process trying to get that all laser aligned perfectly in position so that they make sure that when they do have to mate up the arms like off the fixed service structure, that everything's lined up properly. And you can see that work being done there. Here we got the folks doing all the connections into the mobile launcher platform. There's close to 400 connections that have to be mated into the mobile launcher platform. You've got hydraulic, electrical, comm feeds. Recently there was quite a bit of fiber optic lines that were also a first time that we've used to make sure that we've got good comm between the vehicle and the back here in the launch control center. And here we are at the Pad B. We went through a really good flow at Pad B, getting the vehicle ready for that particular mission. In that particular case, we were there for the possibility of launching a rescue mission for STS-125. So we were out there waiting for a short launch between that launch if required. Everything went very well, and then what had happened was STS-125 actually got rescheduled to a later date because of problems up on orbit. So we were then ready to make that roll back around to Pad A. We had another 6.5, 7 hour journey from that pad to the other pad. Gave an opportunity for the folks to work a lot of different modifications out at Pad B. They're going to get that ready for an Ares 1 test flight that'll be coming up late next year. Again, the vehicle's making that long journey back over to Pad A. Maybe a good opportunity here just to maybe talk about some of the good effort that was made by all the different teams that put that vehicle together. It was a fantastic flow across the board between the orbiter processing teams and the external tank and solid rocket booster teams, and those 2 words pretty much say it all. Go Endeavour. We're ready for a launch tonight and looking forward to it.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you, Ken. Now, I had a question. Now, how long exactly does it take for a flow to go to get the shuttle ready until the next launch?
Yeah, the orbiter itself, it takes on the order of about 4 months to be able to do get all the work as far as deconfiguring that orbiter and getting it then ready. Like, for example, the engines that we refurb every flow, just to name a few things. But yeah, there's quite a bit of work that's done there in the orbiter processing facility to get it ready. On the external tank side, it's on the order of about 3 months from the time that we actually get the external tank here before it's actually ready to launch. So all that's kind of coming together. You're processing the external tank as you're processing the orbiter. And then you got the solid rocket boosters that we also process, and that's done about the same amount of time that it takes the external tank. So you're kind of putting all those 3 particular processing flows together. We integrate it all in the integration cell, and then you've got a month out at the pad, and then you're ready to launch.
When you said that it is a team effort, so could you tell me about how many people it takes to do a flow?
That's a very good question, to say the least. There are, I want to say, on the order of about 150, 200 folks on, like, for example, the OV-105 team. And then you've got probably on the order for the external tank team, technicians. There's about, I want to say, 24 external tank technicians. And then on the SRB and the integration side, you've got on the order of about 54 technicians. And then the pad teams, yeah, you're talking about probably on the order of about 250 folks, that technicians. And I have not even mentioned the engineering teams and the quality teams and the logistics that's all behind that. But I'm just talking about pure technicians that's actually done as far as the work itself. But yeah, it's a very large team. Everyone's specialized, certified, ready to go. And they know what they need to do, and they do it.
Now, as the flow director, you're in charge overall. What's the most exciting part of getting the shuttle ready for a launch?
I would say when you get to that point where the vehicle has now been completely integrated, you're now about ready to do that handoff to the launch team like we've got here today, like for me, from a flow director standpoint, because I've seen now that all the pieces of the puzzle all come together. All the work has been done, and now we are ready to do that last little bit to be able to get it ready, those last 4 days of processing. So I'm like handing that over, and when I make that handover, and I know in my heart that the vehicle is ready to go, I'm like, hey, that's a good time. I mean, I can't tell you how good that feels.
Well, there was a unique opportunity to see both shuttles at the pad when Endeavour was being used as a potential rescue vehicle. I understand that the roll-around is not a common occurrence. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how many times that's happened in the history of the shuttle program?
It's only happened, this is only the 3rd time that that's happened. It's a very rare occurrence, as you know. In this particular case, we were launching, we were ready to launch if need be, because STS-125 didn't have the luxury of going to station. So if we were going to be a crew rescue vehicle, as unlikely as that is, we needed to be ready to launch within a week from their launch. So it was very, very rare for having those 2 flows side by side like that. And then on the second part of it was having a pad that needed to be modified for the next rocket, for the Ares 1 rocket that's going to be, this test flight that's going to be going on next year. So typically we could have launched from pad B, but by doing that roll around, we're giving them the additional time that they would need to have to be able to get that pad modified and ready for a launch for next year. So again, it was one of those rare cases.
Excellent. Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and the vehicle looks great, and can't wait to see the launch today.
Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay, so now that you've seen what we have to do to process the hardware and you see some good pictures, we're going to show you what we have to do to get the hardware ready. So what they're doing here is the team is installing the cargo bags into the module, and each bag has a good amount of hardware installed. There are 12 bags that we're putting on the aft end cone. This is when I was talking earlier about adding the additional 400 pounds of cargo. We had to take 12 of those bags and install them in the aft end cone, and this allowed us to bring up the hardware. What we're getting ready to do now is we're going to get ready to close up the module for flight. We're going to be closing the hatch here in a few seconds. But when you took a look inside the module, besides the cargo bags, you also saw the racks and all the hardware we talked about earlier that was stowed in the module. And if you notice, the guys are kind of dressed funny. They're dressed like they're doctors in an operating room. And the reason we do that is to ensure that the foreign object debris is minimized, to ensure the astronaut safety and proper functions of the experiments. So what we're doing here is we're going to close the hatch, and the hatch is meant to be operated in space. If we were to try to close it, it would just fall. So we have to have what we call ground support equipment to help us close the hatch, and you just saw it getting ready and closed for flight. And the picture you're seeing now is the flex hose rotary coupler being weighed. We have to take a weight and a CG, or center of gravity, for all our payloads. And I think I mentioned earlier that the flex hose rotary coupler in the external carrier weighs almost 28,000 pounds. And of course the next step would be to put it into the canister. And this is a very hazardous activity, and every move is very delicate because we need to keep the payload in a safe and flight-worthy condition, and also ensure that it's properly installed into the canister. It's a very slow process, but it does work. And there it is. It's getting installed into the canister. And the reason why this goes in first is because the canister simulates the payload bay, and we have to work aft forward. So that's the first thing that goes in. And of course, the second thing that goes in is the logistics module, and there's a nice picture of it now being lifted. And the total weight of the logistics module is almost 28,000 pounds, which 14,441 pounds are cargo and system racks. And of course, that's the last thing to be installed into the canister before we leave the space station processing facility, and we have to head outside to get the canister transferred into the vertical position. So we just left the airlock in the space station processing facility, and now we're going to head on out to the canister rotation facility in order to rotate the canister to the vertical position in preparation for our payload to install at the pad. Okay, so we rotated vertical, and we left the canister rotation facility, and now we begin a nice journey, which is about 3 hours long, to Pad A, again, so we can install the canister into the payload changeout room. And here in about a few seconds, we'll be crossing the vehicle assembly building. As we there it is, as we head towards Pad A. Now, there's a beautiful picture of the pad on the right-hand side, and of course the canister on the left-hand side. Now, as we get to the pad, we also have to keep the canister level, and the device allows us to keep the canister level as we go up the incline towards the pad. And now we have to position the canister to be lifted into the payload changeout room. And this task does take a bit because we have to ensure that we have proper alignment as the canister is being lifted. The part of the pad that the canister is being installed on is called the rotating service structure. It's open right now, and that's to allow the payload to be installed, and also to allow the big mobile transport to eventually bring over the shuttle. And then once the shuttle is at the pad, that rotating service structure that you see will actually close and cover part of the orbiter. And then the payload changeout room doors are open, followed by the opening of the orbiter doors. So we're slowly lifting this thing up, and once we get it installed, there's actually inner and outer doors that we have to open up, and that's to minimize the weather and the foreign object debris and keeping the payload clean and safe for flights. So we have the doors opening up, and you'll see a beautiful shot of our payload in the canister. And on the bottom you can see the flex hose rotary coupler, and on top you see the pressurized logistics module. And now we're going to take that payload, and we're going to transfer it from the canister into the payload changeout room. That's what's happening right now. And then eventually the next step would be the orbiter will arrive a few days later, and then we'll take the payload and we'll transfer it from the payload changeout room into the orbiter payload bay.
We're waiting now for footage of the astronauts putting on their launch and entry suit. At T-3 hours in holding, we have 25 minutes left in this built-in hold, and we have no issues that are being worked that would delay launch. Commander Chris Ferguson is putting on his launch and entry suit. Commander Ferguson is a U.S. Navy captain who was born in Philadelphia. Pilot Eric Bowe, a U.S. Air Force colonel. This is his first space flight. He's logged over 4,000 hours in 45 different aircraft. Pilot Bowe giving a little wave. Mission Specialist Donald Pettit. He's the Mission Specialist 1. This is his second space flight. He was an Expedition 6 science officer. He spent over 161 days in space. Sandy Magnus. Sandy's a veteran of spaceflight STS-112. She's going to stay on board as the Expedition 18 flight engineer and a science officer. Mission Specialist Heidi Piper. Heidi Piper is a veteran of one space flight. She was on STS-115. She's the lead STS-126 spacewalker. She'll conduct 3 spacewalks. Mission Specialist 4, Army Lieutenant Colonel Shane Kimbrough, served in Operation Desert Storm. This is his first spacewalk, or first space flight, and he will conduct 2 spacewalks. Mission Specialist Steve Bowen. He's Mission Specialist 2, a U.S. Navy captain. This is his first space flight. Putting on his launch and entry suit, he will conduct 3 spacewalks. We'll now go to Allard Butel with NASA astronaut Dottie Metcalf-Lindenberger as we follow the STS-126 crew out of the Operations and Checkout building, where they were suited up and they'll make their way to Endeavour.
We have the actual crew members coming down and getting ready, it looks like, to head onto the elevator to come down to the Operations and Checkout building in the Kennedy Space Center's industrial area. It's got to be a pretty good feeling when you're...
Oh yeah, you see all the smiles there, all the teamwork.
We see the Astrovan making its way down the NASA causeway and will be making its turn near the vehicle assembly building before they actually drop off they typically drop off the pilot of the shuttle training aircraft.
Right, so Steve Lindsay will get out and then go to the shuttle landing facility, and then the rest will proceed on to Launch Control Center.
The Astrovan now is obviously on the up at the pad surface and will be stopping on the mobile launcher platform and getting them into position so they can take the elevator ride up to the 195-foot level. And 195 feet up on the structure is the entry point, the white room as we call it, and where the hatch is on Endeavour, and where the crew will be ingressing, or going into, as I like to usually say,
Yes.
the shuttle. You can see also pretty much dead center in your field of view. That's the access point at the 195-foot level, and above that is, see the top part near the over the external tank. The crew is now taking their elevator ride up to that 195-foot level. And one by one, they'll start making their way across that walkway and into the White Room.
Okay, we can start to see there's Heidi, Shane, and I think it looks like we've got Eric maybe off the top of our screen.
That is the walkway that we were talking about. Closeout crew member going across it first and getting ready. And they have several members of the closeout crew already waiting for the astronauts inside the White Room. And traditionally, you get the commander's first one in, and there's Chris Ferguson. Closeout crew helps the final suiting. And
right, they're putting on their parachute right now.
Now, the STS-126 Endeavour crew was just here at Kennedy Space Center a couple of weeks ago and did this exact thing in the terminal countdown demonstration test, full launch dress rehearsal. Yes, they practiced the same thing. They did the same technicians, the same routine, but it's got to be a lot different knowing that this time you really are actually going to launch. Yeah, this time it's real.
Right, but that's why we practice it, so that you know what to expect, and if there are any things you wanted to change or do differently, then you would do it. But it's a pretty good routine here. There we can see Commander Chris Ferguson waving to probably family and friends.
Commander Ferguson is now crawling his way into the hatch and will be helped into his seat on the flight deck. What are some of the things that he's going to do? Obviously, we've called him the commander.
Right.
He's in charge.
So obviously, he's in command of the mission itself. He's in charge of the systems on board the shuttle, flying the shuttle. He'll do the docking on flight day 3 with the International Space Station. And before he does the docking, he'll do the RPM, the pitch maneuver that we use now to inspect the shuttle.
That's the rendezvous pitch maneuver you were mentioning, the backflip.
Right.
We've grown accustomed to seeing, but had never done before in 2005. It allows the station crew members to take 2 digital cameras, 400mm and 800mm shots of the underbelly and the heat shield, and see resolution between the 2 cameras between 3 and 1 inches, and that gets put down to the ground as part of our overall inspection techniques.
There we can see Sandra Magnus as she's waving, getting the famous Snoopy cap on. So we can see as they're strapping Chris Ferguson in and then getting him onto cooling.
Sandy Magnus is on board Endeavour, and that was pilot Eric Bowe getting in the White Room and getting ready to.
Yep, now we're seeing
Eric's getting his parachute on there too. There's our mid-deck.
Sandy and Magnus getting, again, these are not comfortable positions. It's not an easy thing to do.
Not easy to get into. You can see they have to have that strap there to kind of help hold up and lift your back up as you get ready to get into a position. It's not like sitting in your car and strapping on your seatbelt.
No.
It's a little bit different.
So what are exactly some of the things that Eric Bowen will be doing during the mission, obviously, besides, as I mentioned,
right, so as pilot, he'll be backing up the commander on the docking with the space station and following through the rendezvous timeline, as well as he has shuttle arm operations, and then after the undock, he'll do the fly around of the station. And then as they come back in for landing, he'll fly on the heading alignment cone also. So the pilot does get to have some chance to fly.
Does get to fly, and he'll do some work with the spacewalks and some of the internal choreographing of it.
So you can see Heidi's coming in here now, and they'll be getting Eric ready to go on through the hatch in a few moments.
This is the maximum number of astronauts you're going to get in the white room at one time. See pilot Eric Bowen climbing on up into his seat.
Yeah, there's actually handles up that you can see where he's reaching for that he'll use to help pull himself up into the seat.
OTC, CLFC?
Yes, there you go.
I give you 619 through 621 complete.
And you're giving me 622. Thank you.
NOTC, MS3 on board at this time.
Copy that, Travis. 2148.
Here we have
was
Don Pettit.
confirming that that Heidi Piper is actually on board Endeavour.
Okay.
And that was, as you said, Don Pettit in the white room getting himself ready to get inside the shuttle.
There's Shane Kimbrough getting into his parachute. And Shane spent a lot of time down here watching launches. His grandparents lived in the area, and so he's been coming here quite often. Maybe he's, I bet he's really excited to be going inside the shuttle this time and not just watching from the outside, but how neat to have had that experience.
And often talk about, I never thought that I would be, I watched them go up, but I never thought I'd actually be in one going up in one. I think, yeah, you're right, a much better view from
inside. I think he's
inside
going to enjoy that.
Now we can see Mission Specialist Steve Bowen in the white room.
That's right. He'll be sitting in the MS2 position between the commander and pilot with a view of all of our meds displays, our displays on board.
And now all crew members are on board, and actually it's an interesting point. Now we can see the glow sticks a lot better now. We were making that transition from what was a perfectly sunny afternoon here in Central Florida along the East Coast, and now it's getting a little darker.
Right, so I guess it's our only time that we really know that this is November. We are having that sunset earlier, and they'll have be ready for this beautiful night launch. It's really neat to see the whole flight deck now, all the crew members on board. Again, Commander Chris Ferguson, Pilot Eric Bowe, MS Specialist 1, Don Pettit, MS Specialist 2, Steve Bowen, and then on our mid-deck we'll have Heidi Piper, Shane Kimbrough, and Sandy Magnus. And just wishing them the best and Godspeed as they go off to the International Space Station and getting it ready for 6-person crew and getting ready to bring home Greg Shamatov.
This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 1 hour, 30 minutes and counting. While the STS-126 crew has been going into Space Shuttle Endeavour and getting strapped in and having comm checks, launch crews have been busy preparing the vehicle for launch this evening. They powered up Endeavour's solid rocket booster tracking system and synced the master events controller on the shuttle. The master events controller times out all critical steps for the launch between Kennedy Space Center's firing room and the Range Operations Center at Cape Canaveral. Checks were completed of the external fuel tank's liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen sensors. And the final inspection team, or ICE team, gave a rundown of their inspection. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
And TLT OTC. Form horizontal situation config for your checklist. Copy.
And Payload Bay purge flow rate is set for launch.
Thank you.
Dinner and welcomes before the G20 summit. Leaders look for a solution to the global financial crisis.
I'm not going to speculate or address anything about the president-elect's incoming administration.
Well, she may not be speculating, but other people are after a Clinton-Obama meeting on Friday. And counting down to launch for Space Shuttle Endeavour in less than an hour if all systems stay go. It is 7 p.m. in Washington and at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Hello, everybody. I'm Litsa Vasileva at the CNN Center, and you're watching CNN Today. Space Shuttle Endeavour is scheduled to blast into orbit just a few minutes from now. We're watching live pictures. Its main mission, carrying supplies for remodeling the space station so it can expand from 3 to 6 crew members next year. Endeavour and its crew will spend 15 days in orbit. And we're watching that. We'll bring it to you live as soon as the launch happens. Forecasters say the weather is promising for tonight's 7:55 p.m. liftoff, with just about a 30% chance of rain or clouds could interfere. Our Miles O'Brien is at the Kennedy Space Center and joins us now. So Miles, it looks okay, even though we have the 30% chance of rain, but it looks okay so far.
Relitza, we're having a great night here so far, and I feel like I'm tempting fate a little bit by saying that, but so far what they're saying is 80% chance that the weather will be good, and I would be willing to say they're being a little bit conservative right now. It's a very pleasant night here on the east coast of Florida. This is the Space Shuttle Endeavour is fueled up. It's 7 occupants strapped in, going through their checklist, going through their comm checks, getting ready for a wild ride to space. 8.5 minutes from the launch pad into space, where they'll be traveling in excess of 20,000 kilometers per hour. Let's walk you through the day. The crew suited up, made their way out to the pad. The countdown went off pretty much without a hitch. We've heard some conversations about some difficulties closing the hatch, but we're not going to put that in the category to be worried about just yet. What's this mission all about? It's a 16-day mission at least, maybe a little bit longer if things go well on their consumables, their propellant and so forth. but it's all about extreme home makeover. The International Space Station, as you know, Relitza, is a 3-person operation right now. It was 2 people for a while after the Space Shuttle Columbia. The idea has always been to have a crew of 6. And this mission is about laying the groundwork for that. You double the size of the crew, what's the first thing you need to do? You need a new bathroom, so they're bringing one up. How about some crew quarters? Something that's soundproof, maybe a little Velcro to put some pictures of your family, speakers for your iPod, that's going up as well. And here's the thing that's kind of interesting. As you know, in 2 years, the Space Shuttle will be retired. Now, what's interesting about the Space Shuttle is the electrical generation on it is done by fuel cells. What's a byproduct of that? H2O, water. And so they leave lots of water up there, 70 tons of it a year to keep that space station going. When you don't have the Space Shuttle going up there, you've got a problem. And so they are carrying with them a water purification system, which literally will take everything that's liquid on that space station, fill in the blank from perspiration to urine, and purify it and make it safe enough to drink. As a matter of fact, I have a little bit of it now. And here it is right now. Little scent of iodine there. I am going to drink it for you, Relitza, only because I'm a reporter doing his job for you. Let me take a sip.
I'm honored.
It's not bad. Now, I got to say to you, honestly, Relitza, if I was on the space station, I would drink this with no problem. What choice would I have?
You don't have a choice, do you?
On Earth, I wouldn't say it's my #1 choice, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Well, speaking of drinking and eating, the American astronauts are bringing a special irradiated dinner for Thanksgiving.
Yes. Well, you know, one of the things that's also interesting about this mission, they're improving the kitchen, too. They're going to have a refrigerator on board there, which is, think about it, all this time they've been there on the International Space Station, they've not been able to have any cold drinks, and so this will enhance their ability to do that. And we're told Sandy Magnus, who is going up there to replace the current U.S. occupant of the space, the current U.S. occupants, Ken Chamatov, is said to be a fantastic cook. So it'll be interesting to see how Thanksgiving dinner goes in space. We'll keep you posted on that.
Oh, we'll be watching. Miles O'Brien, thank you. And thank you for drinking that water for me.
And CBFS, I copy 1045 in Houston, flight NTD.
Go ahead, NTD.
Yes, at this time I'll give you 1046. You can perform your BFS pre-flight uplink loading.
I copy. We'll put the BFS pre-flight uplinks in work. Stand up.
And CDR, TC. CDR, go.
Step 1080, T-minus 20 minutes, UPC dump is complete.
No TC copies as well.
Okay, folks, here in the room, looking for go, no-go for launch. Let's see. GC?
Go. Console 1, safety console 1
go.
today.
FIDO, go. Prop. Go. GNC, go. Max, go. Eagle, go. ECAL,
go.
FAO,
Go.
ACO,
Go.
DPS,
Go.
go. PRS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. PAO, he's talking. Capcom, go.
And safety, let me know when I can have 1061.
Okay, folks, we have a go for launch from the vehicle from y'all. I'm going to talk to weather here in a few moments, and I expect to get a go from them.
STM NTD.
STM.
So be ready.
Yes, I'll give you step 1063. You can deactivate.
And NTD ISO. Countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
T-minus 9 minutes and counting.
GLS auto sequence has been initiated.
CISL, go ahead.
Recorder activation complete.
Copy all.
This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 8 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. The launch team verified that the inner door of the White Room was not secured, but it's not a concern for launch. The crew has been briefed. All polls have been taken. And we are go for launch at 7:55 p.m. Eastern Time here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
GLS is go for orbiter access arm retract. And NTD
Endeavour OTC, had the great flight delivering Leonardo to the space station. The legacy of his discoveries rides with you as you continue the quest for knowledge. Godspeed. Endeavour copies all. Thanks, OTC.
The orbiter access arm has now been retracted away from Endeavour. It's the walkway used by the crew to enter the shuttle and can be returned to the position within seconds if necessary.
I'd like to ask you to remain standing after the song as the lights will be turned off in front of you. So for your safety, please remain standing until liftoff. Thank you.
ATC, TLT, 3 good afternoon, and the recent state complete. Copy all. Thank you.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Network CNN USA for the launch of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, about to take off at any moment now from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. You will hear our space and technology correspondent Miles O'Brien speaking with Kitty Pilgrim. Let's listen.
Auxiliary power units that will run all the hydraulic services. So he's going through all those checks to make sure the orbiter is ready to go for launch.
And are you nervous at this point?
You're too busy to be nervous.
Too busy to be nervous. All right, Kitty. It looks good for now. We will be here. And we will, I don't know, she might be too busy to be nervous. I get nervous.
Yeah, I would certainly be nervous. Although I have to say, she's done 18 million miles. She's done 779 Earth orbits. She's been an astronaut since 1991 and has 4 NASA spaceflight medals. Maybe she doesn't get nervous, but I think we would. Just ahead, we'll go back to Cape Canaveral for the exciting liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. It's just a few minutes from now. Stay with us.
T-minus 3 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Engines are being...
We're back with CNN's Miles O'Brien and astronaut Janice Voss. Now, as the Space Shuttle Endeavour prepares to lift off, Miles, how close are we to launch now?
About 90 seconds away, actually right on the money. 1 minute, 90 seconds away, Kitty, and we're with Janice Voss, who's, you know, we're 3 miles away from the launch pad, and in a moment, first of all, it's going to be like a false dawn here, and then secondly, our bones are going to be rattling and our fillings are about to come out. Janice has been on the inside of this. It's actually kind of quiet on the inside.
Very quiet on the inside, yes.
Yes.
Because you have a helmet on that insulates you from the sound of the vehicle so you can hear the comm going on. And you're very tightly strapped into your seat, a 5-point harness. So that keeps you from shaking too much.
Yeah, all right, we're inside 1 minute now. Inside, the crew, is there a lot of stuff to be doing right now, or is it just sort of waiting at this point? Have you gone through all your checklists?
At this point, at least I was looping through my head, what's next? Yeah. What do you have to be ready for? I had a knee board, and I was running through on the knee board, reading through it. What's my next step? What's the next thing I have to do? So you're always thinking 1 or 2 steps ahead to be ready.
Pretty soon you've done a 16-day mission, and you do it that way.
That's right.
Let's listen as they begin the auto sequence, which actually sonic moving control to the orbiter now is essentially what this is doing, right?
That's exactly right.
All right.
20. 15.
In just a moment, let's listen to them and let's listen to the launch.
10.
CLS is go for main engine start.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour, preparing our home in space for a larger international family.
Houston now controlling.
Houston, Endeavour, roll program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
Commander Chris Ferguson confirming Endeavour is rolling on course for a rendezvous with the International Space Station. Speed 1,000 miles an hour. Altitude 1 mile. Downrange distance 6.5 miles from Kennedy Space Center already. Engines throttling down to 72% of the rated thrust as the shuttle goes through the realm of maximum aerodynamic pressure. Altitude 5 miles, downrange 8 miles from Kennedy Space Center. Speed 1,500 miles an hour.
Endeavour, go at throttle up.
All systems remain go.
Anybody who remembers Challenger remembers that's when that accident occurred. This is a key point when the engines actually thrust to in excess of 100%. I'm not sure how that works, but 104% or so.
109 eventually.
Yeah, 109. So that's like the maximum pressure on the shuttle as it goes up in that time frame, right?
Right. That's why we throttle down. They call it throttle bucket. If you look at the thrust profile, it goes down like this to take the heavy loads, drop them down just a little bit.
All right, and as we go up, we're watching very closely as we reach the point where those twin solid rocket boosters will come off, be jettisoned, they go back into the sea, and boy, it was just bright as day here, wasn't it? I felt like I needed my sunglasses on. What are you feeling on board the shuttle at this time?
Well, we're just about at 2 minutes, yeah, so the thrust is starting to tail off on the SRBs, and you can see there's the separation. And you can feel that sudden drop from 2.5 Gs down to just a little bit more than 1 time your normal weight.
Yeah.
And everything gets very smooth.
Boost drops confirms a clean separation of the 2 solid rockets.
It's almost like a lazy thing with tremendous speeds. This is a moment where you breathe a sigh of relief on board, right?
Because the solids are gone.
They're loud, they're rumbly, there's a lot of vibration. All of a sudden, you go to a much smoother ride.
And they can't be turned off. So the main engines can be controlled, but the solids, once they light, they're burned until they're done.
Now, what we do have also as well, as we should be seeing shortly, are pictures on board. There you see those twin solid rocket boosters. Almost looks like a couple of cigarettes that have been tossed off of a vehicle on the road or something. As they make their way down, they come down by parachute or fished out of the water and reused, repacked, and there you see what looks like a planet or a star, and that's the Space Shuttle Endeavour on its way.
That's right. And at a night like this, you can see it for a long ways. We can still see it out there behind us.
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous. If you're lucky, and it's not cloudy, which today is crystal clear, beautiful day for lunch, we can see it all the way to the horizon. That'd be really amazing.
And at this point, the crew is starting to get the sensation of additional G-forces, more pressure on them. And that steadily builds up. Explain how that goes.
The shuttle, the thrust from the engines is constant. So as the vehicle gets lighter, the acceleration increases. So when the solid rocket motors dropped away, we went down to just a little bit more than 1 times our normal weight. But as we lose weight and burn up propellant, we'll actually get up to 3 times our normal weight, and then designed for 3 times its normal weight. So we actually throttle the engines back again and hold at 3 Gs for about 30 seconds.
Now, in the post-Columbia era, there's a lot of concern about debris, of course. Did you, in the course of your missions, did you ever notice any things falling on the...
You really can't see it because it's all behind you, or at the belly. You can't see the belly when you're inside the shuttle. But we did have some concern. They had changed the rules from the EPA with Freon, and they changed the way they sprayed the foam on, and we had a lot of what they call popcorning with foam popping off. And so we were taking a lot of very careful pictures of the tank once we got to orbit. Then you can see it after you separate.
All right, Janice Voss, thank you very much. They just said negative returns so far. This has been a flawless launch of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Still on their way up. Now 4 minutes in, another 4 minutes or so on those that main engine, and we'll keep you posted. We'll let you know when that main engine goes off and they're safe and sound in orbit. Back to you, Kitty.
All right, thanks very much, Miles O'Brien, Janice Voss. Our special coverage of the Shuttle Endeavour's mission to the International Space Station continues now with Campbell Brown. Campbell?
All right, Kitty. I'm Lisa Vasileva at the CNN Center. We had just joined our sister network, CNN USA, for the blast-off into space for a rendezvous with the International Space Station of the Shuttle Endeavour. We watched that happen. It was a beautiful, starry night, and we just saw the Shuttle Endeavour make a successful launch and is also a little star in the sky. They continue to follow it there. Miles O'Brien, my colleague, along there with Kitty Pilgrim. We continue to watch these pictures here, replay of the launch of the Shuttle Endeavour. This is a video taken just a few moments ago, and just take a look and take in the scene. And we move back to reality here on Earth.
TLS is go for PERT sequence 4.
T-minus 3 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. The engines are being gimbaled into position for launch. T-minus 2 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. The gaseous oxygen vent hood is slowly being retracted away from the top of the external tank.
Endeavour OTC, close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow. That is in work.
T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
TLS is go for ET LH2 pressurization.
Liquid hydrogen replenish on the external tank is now being terminated. T-minus 1 minute and counting.
TLS is go for auto sequence start.
T-minus 26 seconds. We have auto sequence set.
20. 15. 10.
TLS is go for main engine start.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour, preparing our home in space for a larger international family.
Houston now controlling.
Houston Endeavour, roll program.
Roger, roll Endeavour.
Commander Chris Ferguson confirming Endeavour is rolling on course for a rendezvous with the International Space Station. Speed 1,000 miles an hour. Altitude 1 mile. Downrange distance 6.5 miles from Kennedy Space Center orbit. Three engines throttling down to 72% of the rated thrust as the shuttle goes through the realm of maximum aerodynamic pressure. Altitude 5 miles. Downrange 8 miles from Kennedy Space Center. Speed 1,500 miles an hour.
Endeavour, go at throttle up.
All systems remain go. Speed 2,000 miles an hour, altitude 10 miles, downrange distance 12 miles from Kennedy Space Center. It's 1.5 minutes since launch. Endeavour has consumed more than 2.25 million pounds of propellant and weighs less than half of what it did at launch. Standing by for burnout of the twin solid rocket boosters and jettison. Booster officer confirms a clean separation of the two solid rockets. Endeavour's 3 main engines continuing the second stage, accelerating with 37 million horsepower. Endeavour's 2 orbital maneuvering system engines firing now to help boost the shuttle into orbit. They'll fire for 1 minute and 36 seconds. Altitude 440 miles.
2 engine TAL.
2 engine TAL.
That call means Endeavour can perform a transatlantic landing at Zaragoza, Spain if required. Speed 4,000 miles an hour. Altitude 44 miles, 73 miles from Kennedy Space Center. Three minutes, 30 seconds into Endeavour's flight. Speed 4,900 miles an hour, altitude 53 miles, downrange 115 miles from Kennedy Space Center, 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good shuttle main engines. Altitude 66 miles, downrange 245 miles from Kennedy Space Center, speed 7,300 miles an hour.
Endeavour, press to ATO.
Press to ATO.
Endeavour could now reach a lower than planned orbit, but a safe orbit on just 2 engines. Speed 8,000 miles an hour, 11,000 feet per second, altitude 67 miles, 300 miles east of Kennedy Space Center.
Endeavour, single engine Ops 3.
Single engine Ops 3.
Endeavour could now perform a transatlantic landing on only 1 engine at 109% of rated thrust if required. Everything going well. Endeavour rolling to a heads-up position now to assist its performance and communication links as it climbs to orbit.
Single engine Zaragoza 104.
Single engine Zaragoza 104.
Endeavour, press to MECO.
Press to MECO.
Endeavour traveling 10,000 miles an hour, and the shuttle could reach its planned orbit on just 2 engines if necessary. Just under 2 minutes to main engine cutoff now. Altitude 66 miles.
Endeavour, your shutdown plan is nominal. Go for the +X.
Shutdown plan nominal. Go for the +X.
Commander Chris Ferguson getting the go-ahead for the +X maneuver, in which he will manually raise Endeavour's nose into a +X position to allow handheld photography of the external tank using digital cameras on the...
Endeavour, single engine press 104.
Single engine press 104.
Speed now 13,000 miles an hour, downrange 590 miles, altitude 64 miles. 3 good main engines, 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells. Speed 16,000 miles an hour, altitude 64 miles, downrange 760 miles. Booster officer confirms main engine cut off. Standing by for jettison of the external tank. Receiving live television pictures as Endeavour falls away from the external tank. Continue its climb to orbit. Speed 17,400 miles an hour. Altitude 67 miles, downrange distance 1,000 miles.
Endeavour Houston, we saw nominal MECO. OMS 1 is not required.
Copy, nominal MECO. OMS 1 not required.
Capcom Alan Poindexter pointing out there's no reason to use the shuttle's orbital maneuvering system for the first boost to help it reach a proper orbit. Flight Director Brian Lunny polling the team here for the ascent control team, making sure that there are no post-launch activities that need to be taken care of by the crew that's not on their checklist. Astronaut Heidi Piper and Don Pettit taking digital still camera pictures of the external tank as it falls away. Those pictures will be transmitted down to the ground for analysis on flight day 3 as part of a suite of activities to verify the shuttle's readiness for landing. So Commander Chris Ferguson, Pilot Eric Bowe, Mission Specialist Steve Bowen, Don Pettit, Heidi Piper, Shane Kimbrough, and Sandy Magnus now on their way to the International Space Station on a mission of home improvement. This is Mission Control Houston.